In my previous life, I shamelessly pursued the most attractive guy at school. On the day I died of cancer, he was marrying the love of his life in a grand wedding. Now, having been given a second chance, I found myself back on the day I first confessed to him, in front of everyone. I slammed my love letter down on the desk of the notorious school bully. Startled from his nap, he opened his eyes to see the letter adorned with hearts and gave a puzzled look. "It's for you, use it as scrap paper," I said. The classroom fell dead silent. The bully, with his striking, aggressive features and a silver earring gleaming on his right earlobe, looked up slowly. There were audible gasps around, whether out of awe or fear, I wasn't sure. I remembered him well, Zhou Yusi. Rumor had it that if you picked any 3 buildings in the school, one of them was donated by his family. Hence, not only was he referred to as the Brother CI, but he also had another nickname, Building Brother. A classmate jokingly remarked, "Wow, Brother CI, even the peach blossoms have come to you in class." Zhou Yusi laughed and told him to get lost, his tone lazy yet intimate. After that, he turned to me. "What are you trying to do?" "I just want to sit next to you, is that a problem?" I replied naturally. More gasps followed, this time clearly shocked. Zhou Yusi, propping his head with his hand, gave me a half-smiling look. "No one sits next to me, what makes you think you can?" We locked eyes. Neither willing to back down, I clenched my teeth. No choice left. There were only 2 seats left in the elite class. If I didn't sit next to him, I'd have to sit with Chihan, which was akin to courting death. So, I just threw down my bag and sat next to him, stubborn as can be. Zhou Yusi frowned impatiently, as if he was about to throw me out any second. "I already told you." Before he could finish, I pressed down on his leg under the desk. His expression froze suddenly. In a voice only the 2 of us could hear, I pleaded, "Please let me sit here, otherwise I'll have to sit with Chihan. You don't know, he's a creep. When there's no one in the classroom, he likes to crawl around in the shadows, and he even steals girls' skirts." I had no choice but to. It didn't matter. Chihan couldn't hear us, and even if he did, he deserved it. I got more agitated as I spoke, squeezing harder with each word. With each squeeze, Zhou Yusi's expression grew darker. Eventually, his face was so grim he could wring water out of it. Almost grinding his teeth, he spat out a word, "Fine." I was puzzled. Just a moment ago, he had an arrogant smile. Why had he suddenly become so agreeable? And what was that expression? Like he was a king forced to bow under someone else's roof. Wait, were his thighs a bit too slender and soft? "You freaking pinching," Zhou Yusi finally snapped. I quickly withdrew my hand. Oh no. Those weren't his thighs. After class, Chihan cornered me in the hallway. "What's going on with you and Zhou Yusi?" I didn't want any trouble and brushed him off. "None of your business." Chihan probably didn't expect my rebuff and scowled. He blocked my path and stretched out his arm. "Xiao Linqi, Zhou Yusi is not someone you can mess with. How could you send him a love letter?" Considering what had happened in my past life, my anger flared up suddenly. "What does it matter to you whether I provoke him or not? He may not be great, but he's still better than those who lead others on without accepting or rejecting them." Yes, if it weren't for Chihan giving me hope just when I was about to give up in my previous life, making me mistakenly think that just a bit more effort would be enough to win him over, I wouldn't have liked him for so many years. Chihan's expression turned ugly in an instant. "Xiao Linqi, what do you mean by that?" I crossed my arms and sneered coldly. "It means I'm criticizing you, can't you tell?" Chihan's face grew darker, and just as he was about to continue speaking, I no longer wanted to waste my time with him. I quickly spotted Zhou Yisai not far away and waved my arms, shouting, "Brother CI." Under everyone's gaze, Chihan had no choice but to let me go. His last words in my ear were, "Xiao Linqi, I'm very disappointed in you." While smiling at Zhou Yisai, I was succinct, "Get lost." When I reached Zhou Yisai, I smelled a faint scent of tobacco. "Did you just come back from smoking?" Zhou Yisai simply hummed in response, then stretched out his hand to press on my forehead, pushing me away. His voice was hoarse and rough. "Secondhand smoke is harmful, don't smell it." I remembered that in his last life, he only attended our school for 3 months, and it seemed he transferred because of a health issue. Out of nowhere, I blurted out, "First-hand smoke is harmful too. Can you stop smoking?" I looked at him with hopeful eyes. Shui Chao couldn't help but joke from behind. "You haven't even caught up with Brother CI yet, and you're already playing the strict wife." Realizing how over the line my request was, I said, "I mean, maybe smoke less in the future." "MHM." 2 voices responded at once, and I was stunned. "Huh?" Zhou Yisai clenched his fist to his lips and coughed softly. "I'll stop smoking in the future." Now it was my turn to be dumbfounded. The legendary school tough guy, so compliant, Chihan's unrequited love, was named Jiang Jiaoyao. In my last life, she and I entered the elite class together. I didn't know Chihan liked her, so I sat next to him without any second thoughts. Little did I know that seat was actually reserved for Jiang Jiaoyao. No wonder Chihan ended up disliking me so much that after receiving my love letter, he maliciously said, "Oh, draft paper." Originally, Jiang Jiaoyao was too shy to sit next to Zhou Yisai and asked to sit by the podium instead. This left a huge gap between the couple. Thinking back to how Chihan mocked me in my past life, he probably blamed me for that. Strangely, in this life, Jiang Jiaya got to sit next to Chihan as she wished, but he wasn't as keen as before. Instead, he kept blocking me. Maybe it's true that absence makes the heart grow fonder. To avoid Chihan, I had to stick close to Zhou Yaisai. I nearly followed him into the men's restroom. In fact, it was almost to that extent. Every time Zhou Yaisai got up, I would quickly ask, "Going to the restroom?" "I'll come with you." This led to his cronies teasing every time I appeared at the men's restroom door. "Hey, sister-in-law, coming to accompany brother Ci to the restroom again? Can't be apart for even a moment, huh? Such a devoted wife? What more could a husband want?" Ouch. Zhou Yaisai came out, smacked Zhang Wei on the head, a lollipop askew in his mouth, squinting his eyes. "What are you talking about? Aced your Chinese exams? Ever since he promised to quit smoking, he really hasn't touched it again." Instead, he bought a bunch of lollipops from the convenience store, stuffing one in his mouth whenever he craved a smoke. I accidentally saw that they were all strawberry flavored. He walked up to me with his hands in his pockets. "Let's go, little tagalong." I blushed. "What kind of nickname is that? Don't call me randomly." Zhou Yaisai leaned in and laughed. "Don't you know what the rest of the school says about us? They say you're my child bride. So you've been following me around all day. What the heck? I was just trying to avoid Chihan, that's all." I was still silently defending myself in my mind when Zhou Yusi, without my noticing, took a lollipop out of his pocket, unwrapped it, and made an "ah" shape with his mouth. "Ah." I was skeptical, but I opened my mouth anyway. The sweet taste quickly filled my entire mouth. It was strawberry flavored. Why suddenly, "Give me candy." Before I could finish my question, Zhou Yusi had already turned and leisurely walked towards the classroom, catching a glimpse of Chihan's fleeting figure. I hastily chased after him. "Hey, wait for me." That day, Chihan blocked me at the staircase again. I pretended not to see him and tried to step up the stairs. Chihan blocked my path with a stack of notebooks. I said impatiently, "Move it." But Chihan frowned and said softly, "These are the key points I've noted. The monthly test is in a few days, and you won't make it without these." I didn't reach out for them, just suddenly looked up with a mocking gaze. After each class division, there's a monthly test. It's used to check whether new students can keep up with the class's pace and to weed out those who were just lucky. In my previous life, I desperately begged Chihan to help me with the key points, but he refused. He said, "You only got into the elite class by luck. You're bound to be sent back." Why cling on unwillingly? He always thought I was just someone who got lucky. Never believing that back then, I really liked him enough to study hard. Later, I managed to stay in the elite class by ranking 5th from the bottom. Everyone was surprised, guessing that Chihan had tutored me. Back then, he didn't offer any explanation, and now I avoid him like the plague. Yet, he took the initiative to neatly bring his notes to me. I crossed my arms and laughed. "Whether I can make it or not isn't for you to decide. On the surface, you pretend to care, but your words are full of disdain. Chihan, who gave you the right to look down on me?" Chihan's expression stiffened, then he sighed. "You shouldn't be arrogant with words. The priority is to improve your grades." I rolled my eyes. "Can't you understand? I said I didn't need them." Chihan reached out, about to forcibly stuff the notebooks into my arms. To avoid him, I naturally leaned back, but I forgot that I was standing on the stairs, feeling the loss of balance. I instinctively cried out, "Ah! Ah! Ah!" But the expected pain didn't come. I fell into a strawberry-scented embrace. "Shh! How long are you going to lie here?" I was lost staring at Zhou Yusi's face until he spoke, and I realized I had knocked him down. That loud noise was the sound of him hitting the ground with his back. "I'm so sorry." Zhou Yusi stood up, twisted his neck, and said to Chihan, "Aren't you leaving?" Chihan's face turned utterly dark, and he left without a word. He ultimately didn't dare to confront Zhou Yusi directly. After he was gone, Zhou Yusi still stood there, silent, feeling a bit guilty. I quickly suggested, "Shall we go back to the classroom?" Zhou Yusi remained silent, head down, not moving or speaking. Thinking he was angry, I hurriedly continued, "It's really him who blocked me. Since you told me to keep my distance, I've been avoiding him." I know." Zhou Yusi interrupted me, lifting his head with no sign of anger. He pointed at his leg. "Can you help me to the medical room? I think I twisted it." Me? I struggled to support Zhou Yusi, watching him hop down the steps. He asked, "So, are you really avoiding him because you listened to me? Do I carry that much weight in your heart? Say one more word, and I'll push you down these steps." Zhou Yusi sprained his ankle because of me, so, naturally, the responsibility of taking care of him fell on my shoulders. I fetched water for him, I brought him meals, I helped him get excused from gym class, and under his forceful insistence, I also took leave. To keep him company and alleviate his boredom in the classroom, during the break, Zhang Wei looked at the pile of snacks and fruits on Zhou Yusi's desk and exclaimed enviously, "That's nice. I wish I were lame too," chewing an apple. Zhou Yusi glanced at him smugly. Is your deskmate as good as mine? Jiang Wei's male deskmate, who was unexpectedly mentioned, slowly lifted his head, puzzled. But Yusi, what about when you go home? There's no one to take care of you at home, Jiang Wei continued, but swallowed the rest of his words under Zhou Yusi's menacing gaze. That moment reminded me of the rumors about him from a past life. It was said that although Zhou Yusi came from a wealthy background, his parents seldom showed him affection. They often had him transfer schools due to their work, leaving him with a large sum of money and nothing else. Despite the private comments among classmates like, if I had that much money, I wouldn't mind if my parents ignored me, I thought that for Zhou Yusi himself, it must still be somewhat hurtful. With that thought, I almost instinctively said, I'll go to your house and take care of you. Upon hearing this, both Zhou Yusi and Jiang Wei were stunned. Scratching his head, Jiang Wei spoke first. Sister-in-law is so kind, but Yusi never lets anyone visit his home. It's fine, Zhou Yusi interrupted him. I turned to look at him, seeing a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth as he leisurely said to me, deal, no backing out. Zhou Yusi's home was on the top floor of a building in the city center. I had only heard that the rent there was extremely high, mostly occupied by startup companies. I hadn't expected there to be residences. Carrying groceries I had just bought, Zhou Yusi casually pointed to the kitchen, put them there. My eyes darted around looking for an apron. When I turned back, I found Zhou Yusi already putting one on. A rascally handsome face paired with a pink lace apron looked quite cute. I was surprised. Aren't I supposed to cook? Zhou Yusi had already started washing the vegetables, balancing on his plastered leg by the sink, his brow slightly furrowed, looking as if he was dueling with something. Oh. With the cabbage, while idling, he unwrapped a lollipop and popped it into his mouth, then mumbled, just kidding, how could I really let you cook? Today, you'll taste my cooking skills. Watching him skillfully ignite the stove, slice the meat, and chop the vegetables, my surprise grew. Probably seeing the astonishment on my face, Zhou Yusi chuckled. What, did you think I was a pampered young master who can't touch spring water? I nodded honestly, as he dumped the shredded meat into the hot oil. Causing a sizzling sound, Zhou Yusi said, you know my family is rich, right? They also call me, building brother. My parents are quite generous. But the moment I argue with them, they cut off all my allowances, even informing relatives and friends not to lend me any money. After one particularly fierce argument, they ignored me for half a year. I almost couldn't afford to order takeout. It was only thanks to a neighborly aunt who felt sorry for me and gave me some vegetables. Although I ended up burning them, I couldn't even eat them. After that incident, I learned how to cook for myself. He turned back and smiled at me. So, during that time, every time I saw the buildings they donated at school, I was so annoyed I felt like selling them just to buy some food. His expression was calm, showing no sign of pain or anger, but I always felt he was not really happy. Even the last joke seemed to be an effort to keep the mood from getting too gloomy. I opened my mouth, but for a moment, didn't know how to comfort him. After all, doesn't every family have its own set of challenges? Actually, I was about to speak when my phone rang. Seeing the caller ID, I frowned instinctively. After hesitating for a while, I answered the call. It's so late, why aren't you home yet? Your brother wants to eat desserts from Panji. Remember to pick some up on your way. Are you mute? Speak up. I took a deep breath and hung up directly. Zhou Yusi looked at me with a puzzled expression. Who was that? My dad. Oh. There was a silent pause for a few seconds. Neither of us continued the topic. Decided to come back, have you? As I opened the door, the living room was pitch dark. Just as I fumbled to turn on the light, I saw three figures sitting in the center of the sofa. The man's undisguised anger filled the cramped space, mixed with the cheap scent of cigarettes. I looked at them indifferently, not intending to engage. Yeah, I'm back. Saying that, I turned to head to my room. Stop right there. Unexpectedly, my cold response was met with even greater fury. A glass cup whizzed past my ear, blocking my path, and then crashed against the wall, shattering into pieces. Glass fragments scattered on the floor, reflecting my current expression, numb and tired. From behind, my mother's voice came, Xiaoqi, what's been going on with you these past few days? Coming home so late every day, no one's cooking at home, are you hanging out with some shady friends? Your dad is just concerned about you, come here, apologize to him. I turned around. Looking at my family of three, if it had been my previous life, perhaps I would have been swayed by my mother's gentle persuasion and apologized without a thought, but having relived this life, I was acutely aware of the underlying message in her words. So it was actually about me not cooking for the family, wasn't it? How ridiculous. Just like when I received my own cancer diagnosis in my previous life, scared and confused, I called home, and their first reaction was, why don't you tell your brother the bank card PIN before you go? Later, I donated all my property to charity, and they, crazed, came to the hospital, even trying to drag me from my bed to change the will. You ungrateful wretch, you'd rather give to strangers than to us. Your brother is getting married. We urgently need the money, and you gave it away to others. It seemed nobody cared about my dwindling time. Perhaps from that moment, I knew they never really loved me. Lacking love in my original family, I sought to find compensatory love in Chihan, but having never seen what true love looks like, the love I gave was clumsy and awkward. In my last life, I fell into such a vicious cycle, leading to a lifetime of tragedy. This life, I clenched my fist. Speak up. Mute. What about the panji you were supposed to bring me? I bet you were messing around with some man, so you forgot.
Ah.
I grabbed a cup nearby and threw it back at them, tit for tat. It was only fair. You better watch your mouth. Seeing that I dared to lay a hand on their precious son, the other two were becoming restless. Xiao Linqi, I think you've gone too far today. I need to teach you a lesson. The man rolled up his sleeves, stretched out his arms to grab me. Although the cup didn't hit his face, Xiao Shao, still startled, stood there cursing. I heard she's been busy chasing after men at school. Some guy named Chi. How could she focus on her studies? Am I wrong? She's just chasing after some random men, and she even dared to hit me for one. Oh great, I actually raised a daughter without any shame. Look at me. The scene was chaotic. Before my dad could grab me, I sidestepped into my room and slammed the door shut. There was a loud bang as someone's head hit the wooden door. Ouch. Xiao Linqi, open the door. If you dare, stay inside forever. I locked the door from the inside, ignoring the pounding on the door. About 10 minutes later, the pounding intensified, and there were even sounds of a hammer hitting the doorknob. At this rate, the door would be broken down in 5 minutes. It's your choice. Come out by yourself or we break the door. I'm counting to 3, 2. I walked over and opened the door myself. Good, you know better. My dad probably thought I opened the door out of fear. After all, in this household, the thing I feared the most was the countdown, because the moment the syllable 1 was uttered, it meant I was about to be hit, so he was surprised when he saw my calm expression. Dragging my suitcase, I walked past them expressionlessly. My mom quickly shouted, Xiao Qi, where are you going? Xiao Xiao sneered beside her. Look at her, playing the runaway drama. Who do you think cares about you here? Perhaps before, such blatantly malicious words would have hurt me, but not anymore. I turned around and said, the suitcase and the clothes inside were all bought with the money I earned from my part-time jobs. Over the years, I've been working to pay for my tuition and living expenses, and I've given the rest to you. I don't feel I owe you anything, but if the court decides in the future that I need to provide for you, I will pay whatever is legally required. Until then, I hope we don't appear in each other's lives again. It's disgusting. With that, I dragged the small suitcase out the door. It's funny, I realized only when leaving that all the clothes I had were bought with my own money, and I didn't even have more than 5 sets of clothes. My words seemed to have stunned everyone. After walking a distance, disjointed voices of conversation followed. Xiao Qi, what are you saying? Are you really leaving? Are you really so heartless to leave your mom and dad? Why stop her? I've always said, daughters are thankless, and all that nonsense about being the little padded jacket. I spit on that. Just let her go, Mom. I bet she won't last long and will come back with her tail between her legs. I clenched the handle of my suitcase and smiled. We'll see how long I last. The road in the neighborhood was very dark, the dim streetlights elongating my shadow. I stared at my shadow, suddenly feeling a bit lost. Admitting that your parents don't love you is really hard, even though you know it's not your fault. You can't help but ask, is it because I'm not good enough that they love my brother more? No. I suddenly looked up. A young man in a gray hoodie leaned against a peeling lamppost. The swirling smoke obscured his cheeks, but his eyes shone unusually bright. I stuttered. You, what are you doing here? When I left your house after dinner, weren't you already getting ready for bed? Zhou Yusi came over and suddenly pulled me into his arms. His shoulders were broad, his embrace warm, leaning against his chest. I listened to him speak seriously and earnestly. It's not your fault, Xiao Linqi, you are fine, it's them who are wrong. It turned out he had heard the words I had unconsciously spoken earlier. I asked him, my voice filled with emotion, really? Zhou Yusi rested his chin on my head and nodded seriously, really, brother Cia never lies. I felt a twinge in my nose. I wanted to say, Zhou Yusi, do you know this is the first time someone has chosen me so resolutely? My loved ones in my past life had all firmly given up on me. I also wanted to say, Zhou Yusi, those cheesy lines are really corny, but thank you, they mean a lot to me. But the words swirled in my mouth and finally turned into, Zhou Yusi, didn't you promise me you would quit smoking? That warm embrace suddenly stiffened. The boy who seemed capable of shouldering everything suddenly reverted to that green high school student. He whispered, when I saw the look on your face as you answered the phone today, I guess something was wrong. I followed you here secretly and heard the arguing from your house. I got agitated and, his voice was as faint as a mosquito's, it won't happen again. I looked up at his eyes, flickering with guilt, and suddenly laughed. He really didn't need to promise me anything. A casual remark of mine couldn't really bind him, yet Zhou Yusi still treated that promise with such care. So this is what it feels like to be valued, even with nothing at all. Someone would still hand you leverage willingly. Zhou Yusi, feeling my gaze, his face flushed with heat, changed the subject. What are you planning to do now? Do you want to stay at my place for a while? Sure, I agreed readily. Actually, from the moment I stepped out the door, I had been thinking about what to do next. I am currently a high school student with no source of income and no time for part-time jobs. Living and meal expenses are manageable, as eating at the school cafeteria doesn't cost much, but accommodation, that's the major expense, in this city. A decent apartment's monthly rent could cost thousands, something I couldn't afford with my current status. Having Joe Yusi help with this urgent matter couldn't be better. However, I continued, I won't take advantage of you for free once I have money. I'll pay you rent, okay? Joe Yusi, surprised by my quick agreement, soon frowned when he heard about paying rent, but it was only for a moment. The next second, he nodded in support of my decision. I smiled at him gratefully, thanking him for respecting my pride. But where will you earn the money? Joe Yusi asked. I gave him a mysterious smile and said, I have my ways. Actually, it's no secret. No, 13 Middle School is the best school in the city. Receiving many investments and donations every year, the school uses these funds to set up numerous awards to encourage students who excel academically. The amounts are substantial, and the prizes numerous. Among them, the midterm exam offers the largest amounts, 10,000 for first place, 5,000 for second, 2,500 for third, and so on. In addition to that, there's also a most improved award, which comes with a prize of 5,000 yuan. Unfortunately, such competitions are often monopolized by the elite class, and that 10,000 yuan always ends up in Chihan's pocket. This time, I think it might be my turn to take the top spot in our grade. This is the only quick way to make money that I can think of right now. I haven't told Joe Yusi about this. Firstly, I'm afraid of losing face if I don't succeed. Secondly, I worry that if Joe Yusi knew I wanted to beat Chihan, he might pester him every day and distract him from his studies. It's not that I feel sorry for Chihan, it's just that the kid likes to play dirty. Joe Yusi is too kind and naive to outplay him. With 2 months left until the midterm exams, I've put in 10 times more effort than I did for my college entrance exams in my previous life. These kids, who have never stepped out of their ivory towers, won't understand the potential that can be unleashed by someone who's been battered by the real world and is back in school. Even Joe Yusi couldn't help but wonder. We live under the same roof, but why does it feel like we hardly see each other? I just smiled and took it as a compliment. In the last monthly test before the midterms, I controlled my scores. Being too conspicuous can attract unwanted attention, and I didn't want to get carried away with my progress in the coming time. So, I kept my grades within the bottom few of the class, not too different from usual, but enough to ensure I wouldn't be kicked out of the elite class. However, during the exam, I knew all the answers and my heart couldn't help but race with excitement. A sense of anticipation welled up inside me. It was like a fully prepared general yearning for the battlefield. After the results were out, Chihan helped distribute the test papers. When he got to my desk, his expression was one of pity, but his eyes gleamed with satisfaction. He sighed and said, I told you not to be so stubborn. You almost got kicked out of the elite class. I've kept the notes for you, just in case you need them. Chihan, I suddenly called out to him, perhaps not expecting me to call him in such a gentle tone. He was momentarily stunned and blushed as he responded. I didn't even look up, just said indifferently, maybe you should consider adopting a child from the orphanage. Chihan was baffled. What? You seem to have a strong paternal instinct. It would suit you. Chihan's face darkened completely, and it took him several deep breaths to calm down before he said to me, Xiao Linqi, don't push your luck, I really want to see how you handle the midterm exams. He wanted to say more, but then he caught a glimpse of Zhou Yusi entering the classroom, and after giving me a few glances, he finally walked away clenching his molars. Zhou Yusi sat down, frowning as he watched Chihan's retreating back, and asked, is he bothering you again? I shook my head, waving the test paper in my hand. Zhou Yusi chuckled, snatched the test paper from my hand, and said with a smile, you did well. He never had to worry about which class he was in. After all, even if he scored the lowest in the entire school, the principal would keep him in the elite class for the sake of his family's donations. But if I could improve his scores, maybe his parents wouldn't force him to transfer schools. So I asked him, where's your test paper? Zhou Yusi was taken aback, then defiantly said, I didn't take the test. I went out to play basketball. Since the seating in the test room is randomly assigned, I didn't know he had skipped the test. I was shocked. Why? Zhou Yusi casually replied, it's boring. Didn't feel like taking it. I fell silent. Well, it looks like improving his grades is going to be a long and challenging task. But the teacher intentionally placed the students from the elite class in the same examination hall to prevent copying and cheating by students from the regular classes. So, unfortunately, Chihan, Jiang Jiaoyao, and I ended up in the same room. They were even seated to my left and right. Bad luck. However, once the bell rang, I no longer cared about those distractions. Unlike the last monthly test, this time I performed to my full potential. In my past life, I always felt that studying was difficult. and after getting into the elite class, I started to slack off. If it weren't for wanting to stay close to Chihan, I probably would have been kicked out soon after I joined, but living this life again, I realized that studying isn't as hard as life's real struggles. Without proper study, I might repeat my past mistakes, get entangled with unworthy men, or become manipulated by my own family. With this belief, I have been extremely diligent over the past 2 months. Questions that used to stump me now seemed like child's play, so much so that half an hour before the exam ended, I had already finished my paper. I checked my answers again. Chihan just put down his pen and gave me a skeptical look as the bell rang and the teacher collected our papers. The crowd rushed towards the door. Chihan squeezed next to me, frowning and said, "The questions were quite challenging this time, but even if you couldn't do them, you shouldn't just give up." I raised an eyebrow. "Difficult, you say?" "I didn't feel that at all." Chihan's frown deepened, his tone filled with the superiority of a top student. "You might not feel it, but the last few major questions were indeed tough. The gap in the school rankings is going to widen again." "Hey, you." I silently rolled my eyes and walked past him, brushing his shoulder as I left the classroom. Such confident statements make my brain shrink if I listen any longer. In the subsequent exams, I always finished a half hour before Chihan. After the last exam, Chihan sighed repeatedly at me. "Let me talk to Teacher Wang and plead for you to stay in the elite class. How about that?" I laughed. This person is really strange. In my past life, would he have thought to plead for me? No, because no matter which class I was in, I would shamelessly cling to him and adore him, but now that I've discarded him like an old shoe, he still sticks to me, enduring my mockery and dislike without letting go. But does he really want to help me? Not really, he's just not willing to let go. He's just trying to recapture the feeling of being adored and the sensation of superiority. I turned my head to Chihan and gave him a perfunctory smile. "No need, I really can't accept that." Midterm exams always resulted in the posting of the red list. It displayed the rankings of the entire school, pinned up on the bulletin board in the corridor, because this exam was very important. The teachers corrected the papers within just 3 days. On the day the results were posted, I went to the school store to buy water but saw a group of people crowded around the red list, buzzing with discussion. "It can't be, Chigod actually slipped up this time. What happened? When did the elite class change its guard? Stop talking, she's coming." I stood on the outskirts of the crowd, tiptoeing to peek over. The girl standing in front of me turned around, looked at me with a shocked expression. Someone shouted, and the crowd turned around, showing the same shocked faces. After a rustling of clothes, a path was cleared in front of me. Is it really that exaggerated? It seemed almost rude not to go in, under everyone's gaze. I walked up to the red list and my eyes widened. In the largest title, in the boldest font, it clearly stated, "First place, Xiao Linqi." Did I really score higher than Chihan? Yet, that wasn't the most shocking part. Below my name, the one who followed wasn't Chihan. Instead, it was Zhou Yusi, second place. Zhou Yusi, third place. Chihan, the once unbeatable legend, now only managed to secure third place. No wonder it had drawn such a large crowd, especially since the ones in front of him included a love-struck fool who had just moved to the elite class for love, and a school tyrant who had bought his way in. "Make way," a familiar voice rang out, and I instinctively turned my head to see Chihan's gloomy face. I turned back to look at the honor roll and suddenly found it amusing. He was right in a way. The gap had indeed widened, with Zhou Yusi pulling ahead by 10 points, and me by a full 20 points. Just then, a sharp pain at my wrist made me turn back. Chihan had approached me at some point, fiercely grabbing my wrist, his teeth clenched as he said, "Is this amusing to you?" I was baffled. If you're referring to me taking first place, then yes, it is quite amusing. Knocking you down a peg feels great. The crowd of onlookers grew, nearly blocking the entire corridor. At that moment, Chihan growled in a voice neither too loud nor too soft, "Even if you cheat, you should have a limit. What's the use of stolen scores?" Everyone gasped. The news exploded through the crowd, and whispers reached my ears unabashedly. How could she possibly score first? Just as I thought, during the exam, Chihan seemed to be sitting with her. He must have seen something. It's likely she cheated and Chihan witnessed it, yet shamelessly scored first. No wonder Chihan is so furious. Listening to the public condemnation, I scoffed. "Oh, they've even fabricated the entire process now. Do you have any proof?" Chihan, grinding his molars, replied darkly, "Xiao Linqi, you might fool others, but not me. How could you improve so much in 2 months? Who leaked the questions to you? Was it Zhou Yusi? That must be why he came second." The crowd inhaled sharply in waves. The murmurs grew louder. That explains how both of them could score first and second.
Yeah.
Zhou Yusi's family is so wealthy, it's not impossible for him to bribe the teachers. He got the answers and then passed them to Xiao Linqi. They are desk mates after all. How could both of them improve so much at the same time? There must be something fishy. Now I understand how rumors start. I suddenly broke free from Chihan's grip, hugged my arms, and said with a laugh, "Can't you handle the setback?" Are you losing your mind over this, Chi-han? You'd better get used to it because from now on, I'll beat you in every exam. You might as well start saying goodbye to being the top student. With that, I turned to leave. But Chi-han persisted, calling out from behind, so, you still refuse to admit it? His accusation made me laugh. Don't just talk, where's your proof? The crowd fell silent for a few seconds, all eyes on Chi-han. His expression darkened, and then as if making a resolution, he shouted, I saw it. Xia Linqi, I personally saw you cheating. Oh, Chi-han can be so foolish. If only he had claimed I memorized the answers in my head. Cheating, copying from small slips of paper. Couldn't they just check the surveillance cameras, until our teacher, with a constipated expression, told us, the exam room's camera was broken. The way he avoided eye contact made it clear, he was going to protect Chi-han. After all, Chi-han had been the perennial top student. Still the teacher's darling despite not being first this time, so, the teacher would rather lie than let people know Chi-han had desperately lied, but why should my reputation suffer for his wrongdoing? I was accused of cheating without any evidence, but the testimonies seemed to solidify the claim against me. Just then, a lazy voice drifted in from outside the office. Even a simple camera breaks so easily. I'm starting to wonder if my dad's investment is just being embezzled by the school board. Makes me question if it's even worth building another building for this school. Surprised, I turned around and saw Zhou Yusi walking over, hands in pockets, from among the onlookers. Sweat was clearly visible on the forehead of our homeroom teacher. Stuttering, he asked, why are you here? Zhou Yusi pursed his lips and said, didn't someone claim that the second place I worked hard for was achieved through cheating? I came to see who dares to stir up trouble. The teacher wiped his forehead with his sleeve and said sheepishly, we're not talking about you, we're discussing the matter concerning student Xia Linqi. Oh, Zhou Yusi smiled, you say she cheated. So where did she get the answers from? The questions are set by renowned teachers from the province. She had no access to them. The only possibility is that she got them from me, right? The teacher fell silent. Zhou Yusi was right. I neither had the connections nor the money to buy answers from the question setters. The most believable rumor now was that Zhou Yusi had bribed a teacher and shared the answers with me. But pinning the blame on me versus on Zhou Yusi was a completely different matter. I knew very well that Zhou Yusi was determinedly linking us together to leverage his family's influence over the school. Grateful, I shot him a thankful look. The teacher's face grew sweatier as he saw the situation unfavorable for further pressing us, so he turned to Chi-han and asked, Chi-han, tell the teacher, did you really see Xia Linqi cheating? Maybe you were mistaken, and it's all just a misunderstanding? His tone was coaxing, almost suggestive, but at this stage, Chi-han couldn't possibly back down. Clenching his teeth, he insisted, I saw it with my own eyes. The teacher fell silent, his gaze shifting back and forth between the two groups, unsure of how to proceed. Since he had already mentioned that the camera was broken, to now say it was fixed would expose his hypocrisy. He couldn't allow his authority as a teacher to be undermined. Chi-han also grasped this point. Which is why he stubbornly refused to give in. Just as the standoff continued, a clear female voice suddenly came from the door. I can testify. My heart sank bit by bit as Jiang Jiaya walked into the office. How could I forget about her? She and Chi-han were sitting on either side of me at the time. If she now corroborated Chi-han's story that I cheated, I would truly be unable to clear my name even if I jumped into the Yellow River. Zhou Yusi, sensing my distress, subtly hooked his little finger with mine where no one could see. Don't panic. Whether it was his reassurance or not, my heart calmed down. In contrast, Chi-han's eyes sparkled, seemingly certain that Jiang Jiaya would support him. The teacher asked, Jiang, what testimony do you have? Jiang Jiaya looked at Chi-han, then at me, and finally took a deep breath as if mustering courage, and said, I can testify that Xia Linqi did not cheat. What? Chi-han was also stunned. He was the first to react, desperately stepping forward to grab Jiang Jiaya's clothes and shouting, what are you talking about? Zhou Yusi's eyes narrowed, and he stepped forward to grab Chi-han by the collar, forcing him to retreat. The scene became chaotic, interspersed with the teacher trying to mediate. Hey, no fighting. Jiang Jiaya looked terrified, her face pale, but still, she bravely stood by my side and said, I was sitting right next to Xia Linqi at the time, and I can assure you she did not cheat. She was solving problems so quickly that I was a bit surprised and ended up watching her more closely. I can assure you, she never pulled out any cheat sheets or engaged in cheating throughout the entire exam. After she finished speaking, the whole office fell silent. Only the students outside the door who were following the drama suddenly burst into a chorus of hisses. Chi-han was still feebly trying to defend himself. They were all, in cahoots. The class teacher, rubbing his temples in frustration, said to me, you three can go now. Chi-han, you stay. As we stepped outside, I said to Jiang Jiayao, thank you. Jiang Jiayao turned her face away, looking a bit embarrassed, yet her tone was still firm. Don't thank me, I was just telling the truth. Besides, I've realized now that Chi-han is not worth my affection. However, she continued, turning to look at me, I still dislike you. With that, she turned on her heel and walked away, her head held high. Watching her retreating figure, I smiled wryly, as if I finally understood why Chi-han had been so infatuated with her in the past. Zhou Yusi waved his hand in front of my face. What are you staring at? I came back to my senses and shook my head. Nothing, just thinking, she's braver than me. The school's decision regarding Chi-han was to issue a formal reprimand, which would be recorded on his student file. Slandering someone else would now be a permanent stain on his record. I knew that the school took such a strong stance partly because Zhou Yusi had pushed for it, but once the Chi-han issue was resolved, I began to interrogate Zhou Yusi, arms crossed and squinting my eyes. I asked, if you could rank second in the whole school, why did you pretend to have poor grades before? Zhou Yusi shrugged. Didn't I tell you, it was boring, I didn't feel like trying. So, was the test too simple for him to find it interesting? Zhou Yusi continued. After you asked about my grades last time, I thought I'd make a big impression and get you to admire me a bit. Unfortunately, Xiao Linqi, I still couldn't outscore you. I laughed. Sorry, but it looks like you'll have to admire me this time. Zhou Yusi looked at me, his eyes bright. I've always admired you. Classmate Xiao Linqi, perhaps the blow to Chi-han was too severe, as he no longer interfered in my life, but neither did he focus on his studies. His grades continued to decline, even falling out of the top 10 in our grade. Favored son of heaven who had never faced defeat could end up in such a downfall. Well, even if it's this lifetime's Chi-han paying for the sins of his past life, I rightfully received a prize of 10,000 yuan and gave half of it to Zhou Yusi as rent. He did not refuse and accepted it promptly, even introducing me to a tutoring job. 4 hours a week at 100 yuan per hour, enough to cover my weekly expenses. I accepted his kindness without any awkwardness. Life went on smoothly. I never slacked off in my studies, so my grades remained stable. Zhou Yusi occasionally skipped exams, but no one said he was in the elite class because of his money anymore. Whatever agreement he reached with his parents, in this life, he didn't transfer schools and stayed at No. 13 high school, moving into the senior year. Zhou Yusi finally started taking his studies seriously. He was naturally smart and had access to the best teachers in the country due to his family background, securing a solid second place in our grade. Of course, I ranked first. Each time I came first, the things Chi-han had done to me were brought up again, and he was ridiculed and scorned anew. That phrase, "I will defeat you in every exam," became his relentless nightmare, perhaps unable to bear the pointing fingers. A month before the college entrance exams, Chi-han decided to go home and study on his own. As for Jiang Jiao, in this life, she saw Chi-han's true nature early on and timely withdrew her feelings. I bumped into them in the corridor several times. Chi-han always looked at her as if he wanted to say something but hesitated. Jiang Jiao, on the other hand, would pass him by without changing her expression. So you see, Chi-han, what goes around comes around. Those who betray sincerity may not swallow 1,000 needles, but they do receive their just desserts. On the day the admission notices were issued, Zhou Yusi and I were admitted to the same university. There was no melodramatic sacrifice of a better life for each other, because we were both excellent. We got into the best university in the province. As for Chi-han, I heard he performed poorly in the exams and ended up at a university I had never even heard of. Jiang Jiaya was sent abroad by her family. I remember in the last life, she also went abroad, and that's when she broke off contact with Chi-han. If this were a fairy tale, this would be the end. The good are rewarded, and the wicked are punished. However, the princess in fairy tales doesn't have a toxic family of origin, so my story continues. After entering university, Zhou Yusi and I got together. My parents, having heard some news, thought I had snagged a wealthy suitor and came to my school overnight to find me. When the counselor called me into the office, I was still bewildered, but as soon as I entered, my mother rushed to embrace me, smearing my clothes with her tears and snot. "Xiaoqi, you are so heartless. Have you no need for your parents anymore? How many years has it been since you came home? Your parents have been so worried searching for you." After I collected myself, I couldn't help but laugh in frustration. Looking for me, when I ran away from home, I was just 20 meters from our front door where I ran into Zhou Yusi and stood there for half an hour. Yet you didn't come out to look for me, and now you put on this act. The counselor, unaware of the truth, thought I was the disloyal daughter who ran away from home and looked quite stern. She said, "Xiao Linqi, if there are issues, you need to communicate properly with your parents. Look how old they are and yet they've come all this way to find you." "That's not easy." I smiled tightly, my face apologetic. "I'm sorry, teacher, I wasn't thoughtful enough and caused you trouble. I'll take my parents out and settle them first. Goodbye." Teacher, seeing my sincere attitude, the counselor didn't say much more, just waved her hand. "All right, I'll give you 2 days off. Spend them well with your parents." I nodded repeatedly and pushed my parents out of the office. Only after leaving the office did my parents' confused expressions remain. They had hoped to make a scene in front of the counselor to intimidate me. They would threaten me with things like, "Believe it or not, I can make a scene that will make you infamous across the whole school," trying to blackmail me for money. Having known them for over 20 years, wasn't I aware of their schemes? They probably didn't expect that I wouldn't argue with them but instead dismissed the teacher with just a few words, as soon as the office door closed. My mother seemed to snap back to reality, trying to reach past me to grab the door handle. "No, we need to clear this up in front of the teacher." I grabbed her hand firmly, my smile not reaching my eyes. "If you dare go back in, I won't give you a cent." My father came up and slapped my hand away. "You ungrateful child, what do you take your mother and me for?" Ignoring the sting on the back of my hand, I looked up coldly at this man who was my father in the biological sense. "You can go in and make a scene, but open your eyes and see, I am no longer the obedient daughter you used to push around. Take this chance to talk reasonably and leave with me." It was a silent confrontation. After what seemed like an eternity, the executioner finally admitted defeat. My dad lowered his voice and turned to my mom, saying, "Let's go outside to talk," in a private booth at the coffee shop near the school entrance. A middle-aged woman was shedding crocodile tears while the man beside her frowned and remained silent. "Your brother took money from us to study, but when we asked his teachers, we found out he never went to school. He gambled it away," she revealed. "He spent 30,000 in 1 month and came back with a mountain of debt. We paid it off for him the first time, and he knelt and swore never to do it again. But a month later, the creditors were knocking on our door, 100,000. Your father and I had to dig into our savings, money we were saving for your brother's wedding." At this point, she was nearly wailing, torn between the pain for her son and the daughter-in-law who suffered without even entering the family. "If it weren't for dire circumstances, your father and I wouldn't have come to you. We're really at our wits' end." I slightly furrowed my brows. "Have you sold the house or the car?" Her crying stopped abruptly. Both of them looked up at me in astonishment. I continued calmly, "It seems you haven't sold them. Is this what you call being at your wits' end?" My dad, feeling as if his deepest fears were exposed, suddenly burst into anger in a state of extreme guilt. "You ungrateful child, what do you mean? Do you expect your mother and I to be homeless before we can ask for your help? Should I, your father, kneel before you?" "Go ahead," I interrupted, articulating every word. "You said it, so follow through." "Kneel, anyone can talk. Who are you trying to morally blackmail here?" "Fine, you've grown wings." His face turned from blue to white, and finally, he sat down with a dark face. I shifted to a more comfortable position and chuckled lightly. "You both keep asking for my help, but I'm just a college student. Where would I get the money?" The couple exchanged glances, and the room fell into a brief silence. After a while, my mom tried to lighten the mood with a forced laugh. "Xiaoqi, you can stop hiding it from us. Your father and I heard that you're dating the young master of show group, isn't that right?" As expected, the smile on my lips turned cold. "That's just dating. Why should I ask him for money?" Upon hearing this, my mom sensed an opportunity and hastily added, "Why can't you ask him for money? It's just 100,000, to him, it's mere pocket change. And this is for your own brother." My dad, who had been silent, snorted disdainfully and arrogantly added, "Besides, if he wants to marry you in the future, the bride price would be more than 100,000. What's wrong with taking a bit in advance, especially since he's been with my daughter?" "Xiaojiqiang," I slammed the table, losing my composure for the first time today. Even though I was prepared, I couldn't believe such words came from my own father. In his eyes, his daughter was a bargaining chip for wealth, a tool to save his son, nothing more than a living being with dignity. Seeing my outburst, he lowered his voice but still looked dissatisfied. "What are you yelling for? I'm not wrong." I massaged my forehead and said, "I don't have money. And it's impossible for me to ask Zhou Yusi, but it wasn't easy for you to come all this way, so stay in my apartment for a couple of days, and then we can figure something out for my brother." They wanted to protest after hearing the first half of my statement, but after hearing the rest, my mom pulled on my dad's sleeve and subtly shook her head. Watching their little gestures, I secretly chuckled to myself, "If you hadn't come to me today, it would have been better for us to go our separate ways. But I know you won't let go of this money tree, so, no matter what happens in the future, don't blame me." 19. Sometimes, because my tutoring sessions run late, I often miss the curfew. So I simply rented an apartment off campus. As soon as my mom walked in, she started to lament with a hint of sarcasm. "Your brother is back home living a life of hiding and dodging, while you're living comfortably." I didn't indulge her and retorted, "Did I force him to gamble? Did I tell him to hide?" Sometimes, that's just how people are. If you obediently comply, they only get worse, but if you lose your temper, they are the ones who end up staying quiet." After I said that, my mom immediately shut up. My dad just lay down on the sofa, crossing his legs, and looking at a photo of me and Zhou Yusi on the coffee table, he said, "I never imagined that one day I, Xiaoji Qiang, would become Zhou's father-in-law. When will you bring this young man over to meet us?" I scoffed internally, thinking it would never happen, but I replied, "When there's time." Just then, as my mom was looking around, she suddenly pointed at a safe and asked, "What's in here?" I looked up, flustered, and said, "Nothing." My parents exchanged a glance, and my dad gave me a meaningful look. "You've grown up, keeping secrets from your parents now?" I didn't respond these days. As I was busy with classes, my parents just stayed in the apartment, eating and drinking. Occasionally, They would see me and ask me to find a way to gather money for my brother. One day, as soon as I entered, I saw the dining table filled with gift bags. A sense of unease immediately tightened around my heart. Holding a luxury handbag, my mom came up to me with a smile. "Xiaoqi, do you think this bag looks nice? Yusi chose it especially for mom." That was the last straw for me. I stepped forward abruptly, grabbed her arm, and said through gritted teeth, "You went to see Zhou Yusi?" My mom shrugged off my hand with an indifferent expression. "Well, if you refuse to help your brother, then your dad and I had no choice but to ask our future son-in-law." You have no idea, that office building, TSK, I had planned for so long to handle my family's issues on my own, but I never imagined they would shamelessly approach Zhou Yusi for money. I took a deep breath. "Let's go. Give everything back." "What are you talking about?" My dad quickly came over and pulled my mom away, looking down at me. "These are gifts from a younger generation to their elders. There's no reason to return them." I couldn't contain my anger. "If you don't return them, you too can get out of my apartment today." Upon hearing this, my mom suddenly sat down on the floor and cried. "I raised you all these years, never thought I'd be driven out by my own daughter one day." My head began to spin with rage. I couldn't imagine what embarrassing and vulgar things they might have said to Zhou Yusi, nor could I imagine how Zhou Yusi would view me now. "Uncle, auntie. What's going on here?" Suddenly, a male voice appeared behind me. I turned sharply, facing Zhou Yusi's puzzled, smiling face. It's nothing. Seeing Zhou Yusi had arrived, my mom quickly got up from the floor, dusted off her clothes, and chuckled. "I was just playing around with Xiaoqi. Come in. Have a seat." I looked down at his shoes, biting my lip. So embarrassing. I just felt an unprecedented level of embarrassment. I had wanted to handle things on my own. I didn't want him to think less of me. "Let's go." A warm hand wrapped around my shoulder, guiding me towards the living room. "No crying now. The show is just beginning." I suddenly looked up. What did he mean? 20. In the safe in my apartment, I had placed 30,000 yuan. My original plan was for them to notice this money and steal it by breaking the lock. We've installed a pet camera in the living room. When the evidence is in hand, I'll be able to use the threat of calling the police to force them out of my life. However, I didn't expect Zhou Yusi to get involved midway. My parents were ahead, busy cutting fruits and wiping the table, trying to make a good impression in front of Zhou Yusi to secure this golden bachelor. But he was behind, whispering to me in a voice only the two of us could hear. "You prepared so much. How come you left me out?" I was surprised. "You knew?" Zhou Yusi raised an eyebrow. "I've had my suspicions since the day you bought that old-fashioned, insecure safe. Who would choose such a thing unless they wanted it to be easily broken into? There's obviously no pet at home, yet you bought a camera. I was wondering why until your tutor told me your parents were visiting. And then everything made sense." I suddenly felt a wave of relief. Thankfully he had guessed, and I'm grateful for that. He didn't think less of me, and it didn't create any distance between us. More importantly, I wasn't alone in carrying this painful burden anymore. But then, I suddenly asked, puzzled, "If you knew all along, why did you still give them gifts?" Zhou Yusi smiled mysteriously and held me tighter. "I know you're willing to do anything to get rid of them, but I wouldn't want you to tarnish your reputation by reporting your own parents. Let me handle this." I stared at his face, dumbfounded, moved, surprised, and overwhelmed. Various emotions swirled in my chest. Finally, it all came down to one sentence. "Okay, I trust you." For the past few days, my parents have been treating the Zhou Corporation building like their own home, visiting every other day. Each time they returned, they brought back a pile of luxury gifts. They even began planning how to marry me off to the Zhou family sooner to get a hefty dowry. Although I was annoyed, I endured it because of Zhou Yusi's plan, until one day I saw a USB drive on the living room coffee table. It stood out among the other luxury items. "What's this?" I picked it up and asked curiously. To my surprise, my mother suddenly lunged forward and snatched the USB drive back, saying in a panic, "It's nothing. I bought it myself." I thought to myself, you don't even know how to turn on a computer. What could you possibly need to store on a USB drive? Could it be something she swiped from Zhou Yusi's office? I held back my emotions and stepped aside to text. "USB drive?" Zhou Yusi quickly replied. "Yes, I understood." After so many days, the big moment was finally about to unfold. The next day, Zhou Yusi's assistant came to our house. "Oh, isn't this Xiao Chen?" My mother was just about to greet him when Xiao Chen, looking flustered, bypassed her. "Miss Xia, the boss sent me to ask if you've seen this item." He pulled out his phone, and the screen clearly displayed the USB drive I had seen the day before. From the corner of my eye, I saw my mother's expression stiffen instantly. I didn't answer directly, but instead asked, "What happened?" Xiao Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead and said, "This contains our company's trade secrets, which have always been carefully stored in the boss's office. We couldn't find it today when we needed it for a meeting, so the boss sent me to see if it's been left at your house." As soon as he finished speaking, my mother couldn't wait to interject. Is that very important? Xiaochen said. Of course, it's crucial, Auntie. This is a project worth several billion. If it falls into the hands of our competitors, it would be disastrous. My mother's face turned pale, and she was at a loss for words. I'll look for it, I replied. Contact Zhou Yusi if you find it. You can go back first, I said to Xiaochen. After he left, I turned around and asked. The USB drive you took home yesterday, was it the one Zhou Yusi lost? My mother nodded frantically. Yes. Where is it now? I gave it to someone. I suddenly raised my voice. What did you say? My mother patted her chest and gave me a displeased look. Why are you yelling? It's just that. These past few days, your father and I met a young man. When he heard I was Yusi's mother-in-law, he asked if I could show him the drive. I was almost driven to tears by her foolishness. Just because someone asks, you gave it to them, do you realize this is stealing? But they paid for it, 200,000. Think about your brother's situation still being unresolved. Yusi has given many gifts recently, but never cash. I can't just sell my bags to save your brother. Besides, with the 200,000, half can be used to pay off debts, and the other half can buy your brother a car. Isn't that great? I closed my eyes and took a deep breath to hold back the swear words rising to my throat. Why can't I sell the bags? Clearly, she wants both the bags and the cash. It all boils down to one thing, vanity. At that moment, my father was also drawn out by the noise, still putting on airs. He commanded, it's just a, whatever drive, just get someone to ask for it back. What's the big deal about making such a fuss here? I held my forehead and sighed. Didn't you hear what Xiaochen just said? It contains commercial secrets, even if we get the USB drive back. The contents have surely been copied by now. It's like throwing away billions. Do you understand? When they find out it was you who stole it, we will have to call the police, and you will go to jail. Do you understand? Hearing the word, jail, my mother collapsed onto the sofa muttering, how can it be so serious? Suddenly, she lunged toward me. Xiaoqi, you have to save your mom and dad. Your brother is still in trouble. We can't afford to go to jail. Please beg Yusi for mercy. I showed a helpless expression. It's a big project. It's not something Zhou Yusi can decide alone. Above him, there's his father and the board. I grabbed her wrist. Mom, let's turn ourselves in. Maybe we can get out sooner. Impossible. My mom pushed me away. What self-surrender? Are you crazy? She then turned her gaze to my dad. Old man, say something. We can't go to jail. Unexpectedly, my usually irritable dad calmed down, sighed, and said to me, we were wrong, and we must admit it. But we really can't face Yusi now. Could you please invite him here now? We will apologize to him in person. As for what happens next, we'll leave it to him. Before he could finish, my mom showed an incredulous expression. Xiaojiqiang, are you crazy? You want to go to jail? But I don't. I'm too old. I might just die in there. Why should I? Slap. A slap rang out crisp and loud. My dad, pointing to my mom who was knocked to the ground, scolded, in front of our daughter. We must own up to our actions. Consider it the last lesson we give her. Not wanting to watch this drama any longer, I turned and grabbed the door handle. All right, I'll go get Zhou Yusi. 2 hours later, I returned home. I had ordered takeout in Zhou Yusi's office and brewed a pot of tea. Finally, leisurely, I brought him back home. Upon opening the door, as expected, they had already vanished. They were so hurried they didn't even have time to pry open the safe, saving me 30,000 yuan. It's really you who understands them. Guessing they would run, I chuckled lightly, with a mix of mockery and reflection. From now on, they would probably avoid me at all costs, never again coming to cause trouble willingly. That USB drive, is it okay? Zhou Yusi shook his head. No worries. It contained fake information. If the Liu family believes it to be true, they'll just fall into our trap. Instead, it works to our advantage, I said with a smile. Director Zhou. This move of yours really kills 2 birds with 1 stone. Excellent strategy. Zhou Yusi raised his eyebrows slightly. Do you admire me a lot? On his face, which still carried a carefree arrogance, I seem to see the boy from many years ago. I said, I always have. Classmate Zhou Yusi, extra story. Today, during a hospital inspection, I encountered a couple causing a scene. Hospital disturbances are not uncommon, but everything changed when I saw the patient's name, Xiao Linqi. It's not a very common name, so I was almost immediately sure it was her. On a whim, I had Xiaochen look into what had happened. It wasn't long before he reported back. So, she donated all her money, and her parents disagreed. I asked. Xiaochen nodded. That's right, boss. I fell into deep thought, reminded of the days when I was still in high school. Back when my parents were busy with their business, they often had me moving from one school to another. Sometimes I'd be at a school for a few months, other times, it could be half a year. As a result, I hardly ever made any friends. While studying in City A, I stumbled upon a secret hideout. It was an abandoned factory that grew incredibly dim at dusk, at night. It was so dark you couldn't see your hand in front of your face, but I loved that darkness. It became my refuge on days when I had nowhere else to go after school and didn't want to go home. One day, as I sat there lost in thought, I heard footsteps accompanied by the sound of a girl crying. I really don't have any money, please let me go, she pleaded. Under the moonlight, I could vaguely make out a stocky figure who retorted, who only carries $5 nowadays. Stop pretending and hand it over, another, thinner boy said. Boss, it's really dark here, and there are rumors about ghosts, maybe we should leave and find someone else to rob. Stop wasting time, we'll get the money faster and then we can go online. Finding someone else would waste too much time. The leader snapped back, then turned to pressure the girl again to give up her money, but the girl kept insisting, I really don't have any money, my parents don't give me any, clearly annoyed. The leader continued, no money, what about that red string around your neck, what's hanging from it, some jade, hand it over, summoning courage from somewhere. The girl refused, no, this was left to me by my grandmother. As the stocky boy reached out to snatch it, a struggle ensued. Normally, I never interfere in these matters, but maybe because I was in a good mood that day, I suddenly felt compelled to intervene. I picked up a rock from the ground and threw it at them, ouch. The rock missed the stocky boy and hit the thinner one instead. He screamed, there's a ghost, a real ghost. Annoyed by his shouting, the leader yelled, what are you screaming about, boss? It's true, I got hit by a ghost, feel my head, it's swollen. The thin boy trembled, though the leader tried to act tough, his voice shook. Nonsense, there's no such thing as ghosts. Ah. Another stone hit him right in the forehead, stuttering, he said, I was hit by a ghost too, lucky day for you. We're out of here. With that, they fled the factory. I folded my arms, leisurely watching the girl who still stood there, half expecting her to scream and run away too, but she didn't. Instead, she opened her arms and groped her way towards me, saying, kind person, thank you. I raised an eyebrow. A materialist, perhaps. As she nearly reached me, I felt compelled to stop her. Stay there. She obediently halted, but before she could steady herself, she tripped over a stone and fell to the ground. Probably new to the factory, she wasn't used to the darkness, and now everything before her was pitch black. She didn't get up, likely still pondering why I asked her to stop, so she stayed put, unsure whether to advance or retreat. I sighed, why was she so clumsy? Sitting on the ground, she looked up, trying to make out my face in vain. What's your name? She asked. Do you also go to middle school? No, 13? I didn't respond to her but simply extended my hand and said, get up. She seemed not to notice my hand reaching out. Instead, she misheard my words, Chihan, the Chihan from the elite class, who, I opened my mouth to respond but ended up not contradicting her. Subconsciously, I didn't want to get too involved with the people here since I knew I'd eventually leave. So I withdrew my hand and said indifferently, I'm leaving. With that, I strode away. The girl called out from behind me, Chihan, thank you, I will come to find you. I later recognized her because she became known in the school as someone who constantly followed Chihan around. At the time, my first thought was relief that I hadn't given my real name, otherwise, I would have been endlessly bothered. But later on, as I dined alone and walked alone, I would often see her clinging to Chihan. That made me wonder uncontrollably, what if I had told her my real name? Would she admire me like she admires Chihan? What does it feel like to be admired? But it was just a thought. Meanwhile, I also remembered her name, Xiaolin Qi. Later on, as before, I transferred schools and left. I had long since put everything behind me. Unexpectedly, many years later, I would meet her again and still remember her name. Holding my forehead, I instructed Xiao Chen, give her the best equipment in the hospital, the best room, but don't let her find out. As for the medical expenses, calculate them as before. Xiao Chen looked troubled and regretful as he said, boss, it's no use, she has already. I was somewhat stunned. Then there was a long silence. Coming to my senses, I waved my hand. You may go now. A few months later, Xiao Linqi passed away in a hospital owned by my company. I had saved her once but couldn't save her a second time. I felt some sorrow. A few days later, I received an invitation, my assistant said. It was personally delivered by the bridegroom of the Jiang family, saying he was your high school classmate and insisting you grace the occasion. It was clear enough, a son-in-law who married into the wife's family, the Jiang family. I had no particular memory of them, though it seemed like we had some minor business dealings, but among so many high school classmates, who could remember everyone? Yet, when I opened the invitation, I fell silent. Chihan, Jiang Jiaoyao, it indeed was a name I remembered. Seeing my expression, Xiao Chen hurriedly added, they say Miss Jiang studied abroad for a few years, and Mr. Qi has been waiting for her all this while. Touched by his devotion, she hurried to marry him as soon as she returned. They've already had one lavish and romantic wedding which was even touted by the media as the wedding of the century. This is their second one, specially inviting business elites, probably to pave the way for Mr. Qi's company. I raised an eyebrow, catching the key point, Chihan's company. Xiao Chen continued, yes. Mr. Jiang thinks highly of this son-in-law and gave him a sum of money to start a business. Oh, and our company has ongoing collaborations with Qi's company. I almost immediately said, cancel it. Xiao Chen, who had been speaking fluently, suddenly stuttered. What? I repeated, cancel our collaboration with Qi's company. no matter the cost, and send out a message, anyone who partners with Cheese Company should not come to Zhou Group for any business. Confused, Xiaochun instinctively asked, why, boss? Looking at the names on the invitation, I finally said, because he's a thief, after Cheese Company went bankrupt. I visited Xiao Linqi, standing in front of her modest tombstone. I suddenly didn't know what to say. I felt inexplicably guilty. Her life had taken a tragic turn from the moment she fell in love with Qi Han, and the beginning of that tragedy was something I had inadvertently set in motion. Would you blame me? I asked softly, but there was no answer, only the gentle breeze brushes past my ears. Like a sigh, I say, though it's many years overdue, allow me to formally introduce myself. Hello, my name is Zhou Yusi.